Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. In the last video we spoke about the history of Dominica. In this video we're going to go on about its sister island, St Vincent. Dominica and St Vincent were the last two islands to actually be colonized by the Europeans. Before I go on, I'd like to thank all my friends, family and subscribers for joining me on my YouTube journey. If you like what you hear about the history of the Caribbean, later on of Latin America and North America, please hit the subscribe button. Before the arrival of the Europeans and Africans in the 16th century, various Amerindian groups passed through or settled on St Vincent and the Grenadines, including the Chiboney, Arawak and the Carib people. These groups likely originated in the Orinoco Valley of South America and migrated through Trinidad and the Lesser Antilles. By the time Christopher Columbus passed near St. Vincent on his third voyage in 1498, the Caribs occupied the island after displacing the Arawaks a few centuries earlier. Columbus and the Spanish conquistadors largely ignored St. Vincent and the smaller Grenadine islands nearby, but focused instead on the pursuit of gold and silver in Central and South America. They did embark on slaving expedition in and around St. Vincent following royal sanctions in 1511, driving the Carib inhabitants to the rugged interior, but the Spanish made no attempt to settle the island. Carib Indians aggressively prevented European settlement on St. Vincent until 18th century. African slaves were shipwrecked or escaped from St. Lucia or Grenada, seeking refuge in St. Vincent, intermarried with Caribs and became known as the Black Caribs. Those of mixed African-Carib ancestry are known as the Garifuna. While the English were the first to lay claim to St. Vincent in 1627, they never settled on the island because for almost 100 years there was a treaty that Dominica and St. Vincent would be left to the native Carib population. But the French, centered on the island of Martinique, would be the first European settlers on the island when they established their first colony at Barreau-l'Île on the leeward side of St. Vincent in 1719. French settlers cultivated coffee, tobacco, indigo, corn, sugar on the plantations worked by African slaves. St. Vincent was ceded to Britain by the Treaty of Paris 1763. From 1763 until independence, St. Vincent passed through various stages of colonial status under British rule. Friction between the British and the Caribs led to the First Carib War. The First Carib War of 1769-1773 was fought over British attempts to extend colonial settlements into the Black Carib territories and resulted in a stalemate and unsatisfactory peace agreement. Led primarily by Black Carib chieftain Joseph Chatoya, the Caribs successfully defended the windward side of the island against a military survey expedition in 1769, and rebuffed repeated demands that they sell their land to representatives of the British colonial government. Frustrated by what they saw as intransigence, the British Commissioner launched a full-scale military assault on the Caribs in 1772 with the objective of subjugating and deporting them from the island. British unfamiliarity with the windward lands of the island and effective Carib defense of the island's difficult mountain terrain blunted the British advance, and political opposition to the expedition in London prompted an inquiry and calls for it to be ended. With the military matters at a stalemate, the peace agreement was signed in 1773 and boundaries between the British and the Caribs were formed. A representative assembly was authorized by the British in 1776. The French launched an attack on St Vincent in 1779 during the American War of Independence, but it was restored to Britain by the Treaty of Versailles in 1783. The Second Carib War began in March 1795 by the Caribs, who harboured long-standing grievances against the British colonial administration and were supported by French revolutionary advisors, including the radical Victor Hughes. The Caribs successfully gained control of most of the island except the immediate area around Kingstown, which was saved from direct assault on several occasions by the timely arrival of British reinforcements. British efforts to penetrate and control the interior and windward areas of the island were repeatedly frustrated by incompetence, disease, and ineffective Carib defences, which eventually supplemented by the arrival of some French troops from Martinique. A major military expedition by General Ralph Abercrombie was eventually successful in crushing the Carib opposition in 1797. More than 5,000 black Caribs were deported from St Vincent, first to the island of Balikou of Biquia, where half of them died in concentration camps, then to the island of Roatan off the coast of present-day Honduras, where they later became known as the Garifuna people. There were a lot more than 5,000 black Caribs on St Vincent at that time. What the British did was the darker complexion of the black Caribs were the ones that were deported. The lighter ones were allowed to stay on the island. Like the French before them, the British also used African slaves to work plantations of sugar, coffee, indigo, tobacco, cotton, and coca. Decades after the successful Haitian Revolution, the British abolished slavery in 1834. Full emancipation was achieved in 1838. The economy then went into the period of decline, with many landowners abandoning their estates and leaving the island to be cultivated by liberated slaves. The resulting labour shortages on the plantation attracted Portuguese immigrants in 1840, East Indians in 1860 as labourers. Conditions remained harsh for both former slaves and immigrant agricultural workers, as depressed world sugar prices kept the economy stagnant until the turn of the 20th century. A Crown Colony government was installed in 1877, a legislative council created in 1925, and universal adult suffrage granted in 1951. During this period, the British made several unsuccessful attempts to affiliate St Vincent with other Windward Islands in order to govern the region through unified administration, most notably the West Indies Federation, which collapsed in 1962 with the withdrawal of Jamaica. The La Sofia volcano erupted in 1812 and 1902, when much of the island was destroyed and many people were killed. In 1979 it erupted again, but this time with no fatalities. In the same year, St Vincent and the Grenadines gained its full independence from Britain while remaining a member of the Commonwealth. So ends the history of St Vincent and the Grenadines, but it does not end there, because the Garifuna people who live off the coast of Honduras moved to the mainland and up the mainland into what was British Honduras and later is now Belize. We will be talking about the Garifuna people and their adventures and what happened to them in the history of Belize at a later date. I'd like to thank you all once again for joining me on this journey of discovery and history of the Caribbean. And if you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button. And I'll see you anon.